episode 54 of Broad Street Hustle. We cracked the 100 views last week on YouTube for the first time. So a little bit of a humble brag celebration here. So let's try to beat that number. And of course, we have such an important topic tonight to talk about. Keith Jones is the president of the Philadelphia. No, I forgot. Nobody cares about the Flyers. No, let's go through the panel and then we'll jump into it. We're talking Sixers. Everybody knows that. Game 6 just ended last night. We got Game 7 Sunday without a time yet, I believe. I guess depending on tonight's games. So we'll get into what we saw. We'll get into what do we think will happen in Game 7. And then we're going to end with the PGA Championship, which is not this weekend. It is the next weekend. But due to some scheduling conflicts of the Preakness and some other things, we're going to give out, talk about the PGA a little bit, give out some picks and plays. Can't do the full slot of like top 10, top 20 because odds are not necessarily out for that just yet. But based on what we talk about, make your plays accordingly. So let's run through. Jason Say, Etta, as always, co-hosting.
What's up, Tom?
What's up, Jason? I got Jimmy the Chalk with me.
This conversation is going to be deja vu all over again.
And we got Christopher Michael Meeker, who was he on last week? I honestly can't remember. No, right?
He was not.
It was the Derby, right? So we got Christopher Michael Meeker back.
What's up, guys?
What is up?
Hopefully I won't throw up my dinner during this conversation that we're about to have.
Well, I got to imagine it's going to be slightly negative. But don't hold back. Let's jump right into it. Sixers, Game 6. Down 16 at one point, fought back, took a 2-point lead with the ball, and then we didn't see another bucket until Jerry Springer scored with a couple seconds left in the game or whatever it was. So
Jerry Springer
or something Springer. What was more crazy is when I was looking through what players made. He makes $2.1 million this year, which is just amazing. All right, but we're not going to say we all saw the game. We know what happened. It was a terrible game. Let's talk. Let's blame. Let's play the blame game today here on a Friday. We'll make it a Friday blame. Jason, one guy. I know there's probably 6 you want to blame. Who's your biggest culprit? Game 6.
Yeah, I mean for me, and I'm going to throw some stats at you. It's all about Harden. You know what I mean? Like, and I'll give you stats. So the 3 games the Sixers won in this series. Harden has scored 106 points, averages 35 points a game, has shot 37 for 61 field goals, and 14 for 25 threes, which is 56%, is pretty impressive from three-point range. In the 3 games they lost, he scored 41 points total, averaged 14 points a game, shot 9 for 44 field goals, and 2 for 19 from 3. So, and I mentioned it. We had the group text going last night, and I said to you guys, I was like, "This is a Harden off night, and it'd be miraculous if they could win this game with Harden being off." And lo and behold, we saw what happened. And for me, it's all about Harden. If Harden could have a big game on Sunday, I absolutely think they could win. But who knows? But for me, it's Harden.
And for me, I get to be the host, so I get to kind of just piggyback. So I get to pretty much blame them all, which is ideal because they're all to blame. I mean, for me, Harden, it wasn't even just about the scoring, terrible, but his control of the offense was awful. Not only didn't score, he wasn't setting up the pick and roll correctly. He wasn't setting up plays. He wasn't organizing the guys. He went back to, and I think we talked about it in the group text, he went back to bring the ball up from baseline all the way up where they went to Maxey doing that kind of a little bit and kind of passing off to him to set up the offense. They just look lost at times. The last 6 minutes, you can say Embiid didn't touch the ball, but Harden touched it in every possession. So I think that was even bigger than his scoring, if you want to blame Harden for the loss. Meek, who's your culprit?
I kind of blame Doc on this one. In the fourth quarter, I don't know if they were up like a couple, maybe 2 or 4, right, going into the fourth quarter. And in Game 5, they used that high pick and roll like to perfection. And, you're trying to put this team away. And what worked for you in game 5 to allow you to win that game, they barely did at all in the fourth quarter when you're trying to put the team away. Instead, I mean, look, I agree with Jason. I mean, if I'm going to pick a player, it's got to be Harden. But I think that, when you see what you're talking about, Tom, on the court, when you see that there's chaos, when you see that there's no plan, when you see that, everyone is just off, and now Tatum is heating up and they're not D'ing him up, I mean, I was about to text you guys, like, when everyone was talking about the game, like, man, I feel like Tatum is at some point in this game going to get hot. And he got hot just at the right time for the Celtics. You don't call any timeouts to try and talk it over and say, let's set up the play that we know that works, that high pick and roll, control the tempo, because it was so chaotic. The tempo was just completely lost in this game, in the fourth quarter especially. And you end up scoring 12 points. The other thing I had a problem with is that, in the first half, Niang was giving him a spark, and he was completely non-existent in the second half. They barely put him in the game. And I'm saying to myself, now when the game is close, and then when they were losing, you need someone to come in instead of Melton, who's throwing up bad shot after bad shot, turning the ball over. Put in the guy that was your spark in the first half, make the right substitutions, which he did pretty well in Game 5, and I gave him credit for it. But in Game 6, I think he blew it. And I know we're going to talk about Game 7, but, that's a problem. I just felt like Doc just couldn't get control of the game. And, of course, the players were all over the place in the fourth quarter last night, and Harden especially. But, yeah, I have to blame Doc here.
Yeah, I think you're seeing why Doc blows these 3-1 leads, these 3-2 leads, and why he won his only championship with Boston that had, Garnett and Allen and all those guys. He lets the players decide more of the game than he decides of the game, right? He doesn't call the timeouts. He even in the press conference, they asked him what happened. He's like, well, Embiid didn't touch the ball only twice in the last 6 minutes. It's like, well, you're the coach. You can
Right.
make that happen.
After
Go ahead.
Chalky goes, I don't want to steal Chalky's thunder. I'm gonna tell you what's wrong, what I believe is wrong with the offense.
Yeah,
Or
okay,
was
yeah.
last
Keep
night.
it
Or
just
was
to.
last
I mean,
night.
if you have Doc, just keep it to Doc here since Meeker
I
brought
don't
up
know if
Doc.
it's Doc, but it might be. But I'll say it.
But,
after
Well,
yeah.
Chalky goes.
Embiid admitted in his press conference that he has to go get the ball. Right? He has to be the MVP. He has to demand the ball in that situation, and
But
he
he's
didn't
wrong.
do it.
He's wrong in this situation, and I'll get to that. Let's let Chalky go.
But
Go ahead,
yeah,
Charles.
just to continue with the Doc thing. But that is why, to me, that's what some of Doc's issues is. He doesn't correct. He lets the players make a lot of the corrections and lets Harden go out there and control the game and control the pace. And it's not as much as coach. And I guess in today's NBA, you see that more often. The coaches kind of just take a step back. But that's why he won with Boston, because their players were Garnett and Allen and Rondo, whoever else they had. It might not have been Rondo, but and then the other ones, the players couldn't come through. He coached Harden, I guess it was, or no, the Clippers. The story. So, Chalky, who's left?
Well, let me just disagree a little bit with some of the stuff. So I'm not as down on Doc last night. I actually thought he called some pretty good timeouts, so that they went down quick in the third quarter, called the timeout, and I think I texted you guys, say, if they don't come out of this, it's over. And they came out and went on that run that gave them the lead. Fourth quarter, he challenged the call that was ridiculous, and that gave him the timeout there.
Yeah,
and
I mean, on that challenge though,
Well,
No,
but
it's a
then-
no-brainer call. It's a no-brainer challenge.
Well, I mean, if you're going to say he's not doing the right things, then when he does the right thing, you got to give him credit. And then
if he didn't challenge that, I think we
Well,
have a
but-
that
big
was
problem.
pretty easy.
But he did. And then after they were up one, or two, Tatum hit the back-to-back threes, which were, at least one of those was tough shots. He had a hand in his face, and Embiid was on him, so it wasn't bad defense. I disagree with that. I'm not trying to pick on you, Meek, but
I think they were all tough shots.
No,
And
they weren't. They
he
were not all
called
tough shots.
those first two were tough shots that gave Boston
Yeah,
the
There
lead
were
for the
some,
game.
but there weren't all tough
It
shots.
But
wasn't until the
anyway,
game was in hand that the shots got easy for
so
Jason.
he hits two shots after the Sixers missed like 3 or 4 chances to go up by 5. Doc called timeout right away. I mean, I don't know what other times he was supposed to call a timeout in that sequence. Now, I think you want to criticize him for not pulling the plug earlier on Tucker when the matchup with Williams was clogging the lane and making that adjustment earlier. Okay, I can be on that. So I'm not going to go hard on the player. He's the obvious choice. And you can tell early on when he's trying to get fouls as opposed to finish strong and maybe get an and one. And he was doing that early last night and then complained about the fouls with the refs. But I'll just throw a blanket. The bench was completely disappointing. You got nothing out of Melton. And Niang, I think you had it backwards, Meeker, because Niang was in the second half. He came in the second half. His 3 shots he took was in the third quarter, which helped get him on that spark. Yeah.
Right.
And he actually played better defense than he's used to. Now, you got to put Tucker in at the end for the reasons you saw in Game 4. And that's the reason you brought him on the team. So I'm not saying Niang should have closed. But how they start next game and how Doc reacts to that could be interesting. But you got nothing. You got nothing off the bench, and it's been like almost a different guy every game this series so far. Melton gave you 2 really good games. House was Game 5, and Niang, he only took 3 shots, but he made 2 big threes. But they're running 8 or 9 guys out there, and some of them are changing every game. As Boston's got a solid 7 guys, and that's all that plays. And when Tatum and Brown aren't playing well, like last night, you got Smart, Brogdon, and even White that hit shots, and that can keep the team afloat. And the Sixers don't consistently have that when their stars aren't firing.
We talked about that earlier this year. We talked about that at the trade deadline. They didn't go for some sort of good spot up shooter that they could bring off the bench that they had in previous years that gave them sparks. And now we're kind of seeing the results of that too.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, for me, I want to blame Harris before I let Jason jump in with what he wanted to talk about. I want to blame Harris because he had 2 points, but I mean, at this point, Tobias is the old scorpion and the frog story. The frog wants to get a lift, or the scorpion wants to lift across the river. The frog gives him a lift. The scorpion stings him. They both die. And what's the reason? The scorpion says, "That's just that's how I am, or that's who I." Tobias at this point. That's what he is. So you can't get mad at somebody who we know stings. He's the 4th option on a team now, and he still stings. He's barely a starter
soft.
at this.
He's
barely a
soft.
starter.
He's so soft.
I can't blame him. And I'll put the blame on Embiid, and I'm not going to put the blame on Embiid for his play necessarily, but I'm going to put the blame on Embiid for what he said after the game and how he acted on the course with his body language. Yet again, for his 8th season now, he's a baby when things don't go his way. He starts to mope. He went after the press conference. He says, I only touched the ball twice in the final 6 minutes. Well, go get the ball. I mean, I know Jason's going to have counters to that, but do something about it. You're the MVP of the league. Don't mope. You're in the timeout. Start talking to the players, just like Tucker got in his ear in the one game. He there's more he could do than just mope around the court. It goes to the other players, and it's to the point where he's still just a baby. And I was a big advocate for him going in, but he still falls to the ground, holds. We got to watch him hold his knee. We know your knee hurts. We know you took the brace off your knee. We know all that. Just go out, score points, and play basketball. That's all I want him to do. So I'll put the blame on him. Although his play, I mean, offensively at times was bad. His defense was out of this world. And at points in the game, he took over. But overall, his game was not, what it was in Game 5, etc.
But you needed him to take over in the 4th quarter, and he didn't do it.
And that goes to him not getting the ball and putting him where he should be. So
Jason, it's back to your Harden argument, right? So that he's not letting him do it. Harden tried to do too much last night in the 4th quarter, and he didn't have. The results of that were disastrous.
Here's what I want to say. All right, the offensive strategy obviously was bad. That's what we're all talking about now. Watch the game again. I watched a lot of the second half again today. They are doing isolation with Embiid, and it's not working against Boston. It does not work. Boston shuts that down. Isolating Harden, dumping it to Embiid, and then isolating
Oh, they
him,
crashing them, sure. Yeah.
and Horford's all over him, and then
Yep.
they show double, they move away. Boston shuts that down.
Yeah, they got
That-
active hands. They're able to strip the ball when he puts
Yes,
it down.
and that's part of what they added Robert Williams into the lineup. That's part of what they did. The Sixers did not move the ball around enough. That's what they need to do. They can't. Harden can't walk up the ball, and take 8 seconds walking the ball up, and then dribble for another 6, and then isolate Embiid, and then that
Yep.
is not.
Yeah, and that's why I like
working.
Maxey running the ball up, then dishing to him.
Yes, they
It
need
gets
to get
movement. It
into
gets
the
Maxey
offense
moving.
faster and start moving
Their
the
whole
ball
offense
around.
is setting picks at the top of the key with Harden, going around it, dumping it off. Yeah. No, I
Missoula-
agree.
My thing is Missoula made his chest move last night, all right, and it worked. And I think that's not a bad thing for them to lose that game. I'd almost rather be the Sixers now than the Celtics because Missoula made his move, it worked. Now Rivers has 2 days or 3 days, 2 days I guess you could say, to watch tape and now make his move, right, to counter the move of them adding Williams into the lineup. And I think
The only thing I'll say is, though, it worked, but the Sixers still had a 2-point lead with 3 minutes left.
But they scored
and the
86
ball.
points.
Yeah,
too,
but they
you know?
right.
Right.
Well, they didn't score it in the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter.
Right,
I mean,
and
they should have got to 100.
And if you're on NBA Network, whatever it's called, NBA TV, and they're replaying that game, watch that last 6 minutes. You had 2 plays where Embiid, one where he's so confused right now offensively, like he went and took a hook shot. When is he taking a hook shot? All right, that didn't work. Then the other play was he got triple teamed and he tried to they're converging on him. They're not letting Embiid beat them. They're letting PJ Tucker beat them, right? They're leaving him. They're saying, "Go ahead, PJ. We'll give you that shot. You beat us." And he ain't doing it. So one of my things when we talk about Game 7, we'll get to that. It'll be something with Tucker. Embiid is 43 for 96 in this series. Shouldn't be, right? He's 7 foot. His shooting percentage should not be 43 for 96. And the other thing that was bad with Embiid last night was he only had 8 free throws. That shouldn't be either. He's got to get double digits free throws. So, but my whole thing is the ball needs to move around, and the isolation crap, that can't be on Sunday, or they're not going to win.
Yeah, and that's when they get in trouble, and that's when they got in trouble in the blowout losses. It's that offense gets isolation.
Lazy almost.
The ball does, yeah. But that's what I mean. To Meeker's point, that's like where Doc is the coach. Like and Doc's biggest problem is he says stuff in the press conference after the game. Like you can't say things like, "Oh well, he didn't touch the ball," or "We weren't moving the ball effectively." You're the coach. That's your job to move the ball.
Yeah.
Rob Thompson goes out there and says Harper struck out with the bases loaded. Fine, you can't control that. You can't control a guy hitting the ball.
Yeah.
You're the coach. You can control. You can have set plays. You see it all the time. They have design plays.
I think coming out of the timeout, a lot of the times their plays are good, but then,
yeah, and there was. They had
Yeah.
a very effective play out of one of the timeouts. Late in the game. I wish I could remember exact point, but and it was definitely a set play out of the timeout. It looked good, but you could still do plays. Harden can call plays from the bench, but doesn't seem like Doc does that. That's why I said Doc lets the guys make the decisions a lot of times.
And the thing that kind of frustrated me with the end of the game was it was a bad offensive game overall, no matter what. But like for the first half at least, and probably into the third and even early fourth, they did whatever was moving the ball. They were getting open shots and they weren't making them. And they could have, if they make a couple of open shots, it's a completely different game. So now I don't know that Boston changed something up with 6 minutes to go that they weren't going to get those looks, but offensively they weren't moving the ball certainly the same way to what Jason was saying. And their shots, I don't know that they got one good shot in the last 5 minutes, maybe 1 or 2, but like they weren't good looks at all for a lot of them. Whereas, we're getting mad because Melton's missing open shots and Tucker is going 2 for 6 from the corner and all that. But they just didn't even get decent looks the last 5 minutes. So I think the kind of looks you got the first 3 quarters plus, you'll live with that. You got to make more of the shots, but you can live with that. But they didn't really give themselves much of a chance to win unless they completely locked down Boston, and Tatum scored 14 in the last 5 minutes or whatever it was. So,
Well, getting back to Tobias Harris, I mean, if you got a guy that's the good Tobias Harris on the games that they've won, and they have to be honest on defense, they don't have the ability of being able to shut down Embiid, like you're saying, and crashing. When he is, when he goes through a quarter or two, when you can tell from his body language that he's already out of the game, similar to a guy that used to play here in Philadelphia, then you know that you don't really have to worry about him anymore. Now let's go crash at Embiid and make sure he doesn't beat us. If he can keep the defense honest and space out properly, and he's hitting shots at the beginning of the game just goes differently.
Unfortunately, Tobias Harris is not. I mean, we've said it for the 50 episodes that we've done. He's just not a good fit for this offense.
Where was he in the last? He didn't even touch the ball, right?
He only had 7 shots the whole game.
7 shots.
He made some good defensive plays in the second half, but he wasn't getting the ball on offense. He wasn't getting the ball on offense.
Didn't even touch the ball. He wasn't even like it would go to him and go to somebody else.
A lot of Tatum struggling was Harris actually played pretty well defensively last night.
And then the other thing is, Maxey had a good game, and in the fourth quarter looked terrible.
Yeah, I don't know if he got
He was
tired,
chucking shots.
He threw an air ball.
Like Jimmy said on the one, he threw it almost into the stands.
That was an air. Yeah, it was.
Every player was pressing in that fourth quarter just to try and find something,
yeah.
And that's what happened. I mean,
Tatum hit those 2 shots, and then they were like, now we're in trouble. He's making shots, and that was it.
Well, they were up 2 with the ball, and they had 3 bad possessions. And
Yeah,
that
they
was
were
the
up.
game.
That's
They
exactly
had
right.
They had the Maxey where he passed it to Melton in the corner, and Melton quickly gave it back to Maxey. He chucked up a 3.
Melton didn't want to shoot.
Right, and then Harden. I think Harden was the next 3.
Bad 3. Yeah.
And then Embiid missed a good look right in the
That was
right
the hook
in the
shot.
paint. Nah, I don't think it was a hook. I think it was like a little,
I think it was like a foul line jumper. He just didn't hit it.
Yes,
yeah,
it went
it was
in
like
and out. It went in and out. Yep,
Yeah.
it did.
Yeah,
It did.
yeah, and that was it. And then Jimmy said, Tatum at the same
Tatum.
time hit those shots, and that was the game.
The one thing I'll say with Harris is, and maybe this is the one critique I'll give a Doc, and I said it previously, like, I don't feel like they play the matchups enough when they can get in their favor. Now, game 1, they had success when they got the switch on Horford on Harden, and game 5, when they run the pick and roll and Embiid was hitting all those elbow jumpers, like, they got that and it kept working. But where Harris has had some success is if they can get a matchup where, like, Brogdon's on him, and he backs him up, and he makes, so...
Yeah, which he did do a little bit, and he missed the shots in game.
Yeah,
in game
so he
6.
probably lost his confidence of that, but trying
Yeah.
to, if they can get that matchup and get those looks, and the other thing gets me frustrated is, like, with 2 or 3 games in a row, they could get in foul trouble, 3 fouls in the first half, and then that's it. Yeah. Like, Brown had 3 or 4 quick fouls the one night, and then that was it, and so going after the guys that pick up the fouls, and look, Jaylen Brown's a great defender, so you can't just say go at him every time, because he'll make you look bad too. But trying to take advantage, I mean, Harden's a bad defender to begin with, but when the one game he had 5 fouls, somebody got the ball, and he'd look like 5 steps back so he didn't get called for his 6th foul. Yeah. Free throws, he only shot 5 last night. They're not going to win with him only shooting 5 free throws, Harden, but I think he complained too much about the refs.
So one other thing I want to add is, I mean, I think I texted to you guys last night what the differential was in rebounds. I'd like to see, because I didn't really look, what the differential was in rebounds in the fourth quarter, because they were out hustled like crazily in the fourth quarter on the boards. The only good defensive play was the Maxey steal where he had the clear path foul, and he went to the line, and he would have went to the line, but apparently Embiid shot the free throws, and then they were called it back and took 2 points off the board. Never seen that before in my life. But
I was surprised they selected Embiid of anybody to shoot the free throws anyway. I mean, I know he's all right, but I would have thought Harden or Maxey would have shot him to begin with.
I think they just have confidence in Embiid with that.
He just takes the ball. Like, I think he just decides he's taking.
Well, that's on the coach.
It's crazy. But like, I talked about this, I think, at the beginning of the season. I don't know if it was the beginning of the season we were talking about it, like before the NBA even started. The one thing I worried about this team was that, how are they going to look in the fourth quarter? Because Embiid, look, he hustles on pretty much he gets beat up like the whole game, and then when it comes to the fourth quarter, sometimes he's out of gas, and it kind of looked like that last night. And they have some old legs on this team. Harden and Jason, you've been talking about it on the text. He has no legs by the time the fourth quarter is, unless they're up 15 points and he doesn't have to play that hard. Harris, not that he's old, but him too. Like, this team is kind of slow, other than Maxey, and Boston, they have these guys' motors are just way different, and I hope that doesn't end up hurting us again in the same kind of situation tomorrow.
Look,
Sunday.
you could say what you want. The Sixers lost that game last night. Boston
Yeah.
did not win that game. So you could say whatever you want again about Boston. The Sixers were the reason why they lost the game. And they just had no, like you guys alluded to, they just didn't have an offensive plan from the beginning. Even when they got back in the game, it was not necessarily like a solid plan. They just got back in the game, and then they reverted back into it. All right, let's I mean, I pretty much covered Game 6. Let's move on to Game 7. Whatever you guys want as far as thoughts on Game 7, and then ultimately, what do you think will happen? Jason, I know you said you had some things around 7.
Well, yeah. I mean, the first thing I want to say is, it's clear Boston's strategy is, other than caving in on Embiid and doing that stuff, but the other strategy is PJ Tucker. You do what you want. Like, we'll let you stand in the corner all night. We'll give you that shot. If that's the case, you got to think about starting Niang, because they can't do that with Niang, because he'll knock that shot down. Now, I don't know if you want to start the game with Tucker and give him a shot or two, and if he starts throwing up bricks, then that's it, or you just want to go with it from the beginning, because Missoula made a change in the lineup. Maybe Rivers makes a change himself. So, I mean, that's one thing I'll say. And then the other thing I'm going to say is, and I touched on it a little bit before, I'd still rather be the Sixers going into this game, because when you win, and you hear this a lot in football, when you win, you're not going to change anything because you won, right? When you lose, then you change something. Well, if you change something that works, right? So I'd rather be the Sixers going into this game, to be honest with you. And the spread's only 7, and I think that's a Sixers spread. And I honestly, maybe I'm a homer. I think they're going to win. Now, it depends on Harden, and you'll know in the first quarter. You'll know if Harden hitting shots and he's not.
He gets that extra day, should help.
He gets the extra day, and if he's driving and he's getting shots up and he's not leaving them short, I think the Sixers are going to win. If he's pulling up and his threes are hitting the front of the rim, then they're probably in trouble. But I'm picking the Sixers to win the game.
Yeah, and I would say I would feel pretty confident Tucker's probably going to start that game. I just don't see Doc making that change. And I think his pedigree gives him the opportunity to start that game. I mean, he's been a winner in everywhere he went. He's played well in other series. So I think he'll start. But, yeah, Doc needs to have a quick trigger on him if he's looking like one of five's not cutting it. Hitting one out of every 5, like you said. Without getting too deep into it, I agree. I do think the Sixers are going to win. I think the 7 is just the lazy. To me, Vegas was very unimpressive in this series. They were lazy with every single line. They just made Boston's home, they're 7. They're away, they're 2, and that was it. And it's like, I mean, I know that Boston has a much better team, but if you watch the series, Boston is not a much better team. I mean, not that the Sixers are, tremendous, but Boston is not anything that people think that they might be. They have some major flaws.
They're begging to lose.
Yeah, they have some major flaws. They look like that against Atlanta, and now they look again against the Sixers. So I think it's just a complete lazy line of, like, let's just make it 7. So I almost disregard what the line is, too, and just think about the play. And, yeah, this series has been, when you think a team's down, that's when they come back. When you think the team has a stranglehold, that's when they let it up. So I'm going to keep with that theory. I got to imagine the Sixers are embarrassed of what they put out on the court. And it might be good for them to be away from the home fans. I think that was part of
there's
the
no
problem.
No pressure now. I mean, the pressure's on Boston now. The pressure's on Boston.
So, yeah, I'm going to go Sixers as well. Me?
One of the things that you said earlier is something that I think they have to do, and that's especially if Harden's starting the game out like he was yesterday, is have Maxey take the ball up the court. And let James, kind of run around, try and find a spot for him to shoot. Let Embiid be Embiid, and kind of clog up the middle. I know dumping it in. I think it matters again when your other pieces are playing well, where you don't have to, you're not going to get the converge that you've seen yet last night because no one else was really playing well. But I think the Sixers took their biggest punch in down 16 to come back and tie that up and then lose it in the fourth quarter. I have extremely big concerns about how it ended, and I think because of that, I'm unfortunately going to pick Boston to win Game 7 because they're home, especially. And, if Missoula figured something out, like Jason was saying last night, and the Sixers don't have an answer for it, and Doc doesn't come up with a good game plan, which, I kind of doubt that he will, then I think they're going to win. I think it's going to be a close game, though. I don't really think it's going to be a blowout one way or the other.
Chalky?
At the risk of sounding crazy, if this was a 9-game series, I would pick the Sixers. It's a 7-game series, so I'm going to pick Boston. And I think the logic behind that is I think they will make adjustments. I don't know if it'll be enough to win tomorrow, but the ebb and flow of the series, they would possibly win the 8 and 9 if it was a 9-game series, but it's not. You talk about pedigree, Tommy, and Tucker's he's got the ring, he's won Game 7s before. But to me, the pedigree of everybody else on the Sixers roster and the coach outweighs that. And when you go on the other side, these Boston players, and they've said it a million times, but it's the truth. They were in the situation last year. They came and knocked out the defending champs. Tatum, Smart, even Horford, they've played in a lot of Game 7s. They've won some. They've lost some. Nobody else on the Sixers team has come up and played big in the Game 7. That's Embiid. That's Harden. That's Doc as a coach. There's just too much unknown there for me to say to make them the pick. I absolutely think they have a chance to win, and the moneyline odds gives Boston like a 75% chance to win. I think that's too high. I think it's more of a 60-40. So take that for what it's worth. I think they should cover 7. I don't think they win, and that's just because despite everything they've done well this series, when it gets down to this kind of game, they haven't shown that they can win this kind of game. Boston has, and until they do it, I'm not going to be a believer. And I just can't think that like Tatum and Brown aren't going to have one good game in tandem this series, and I think it's tomorrow or Sunday.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear. When I said pedigree for Tucker, I meant him specifically for playing. I am not a believer in, well, this team's been here before. You're there, the team that isn't there and doesn't win until they win. I got 3 words for you. Big Dick Nick, right? Nobody had less pedigree than he did, and nobody had more pedigree than Tom Brady until he beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. So that pedigree bullshit crap, I'm not a big believer in.
Yeah,
and
but,
I hear it all the time. And
I'll
then the
say
same team would win every year.
That's one game, though. I know it's one game we're talking about.
The same
but
players would win every year then. I mean, there's always, you don't have experience till you have the experience.
Nick Foles' career was up
Tom
and
Brady
down,
did win,
but he didn't continually disappoint in the playoffs like Harden, Embiid, and Doc have. He had one playoff game that they lost that wasn't his fault going into this championship season, if you want to talk about big games.
I just don't think that's a reason to me, and I just wanted to make it clear that when I was saying Tucker, I didn't mean that portion of it. I just think, I mean, then this year I guess Boston and the Lakers are going to be in the championship, and I mean
One question I had.
the Warriors had it. Didn't the Warriors have all that pedigree? They're on the verge of losing.
Yeah. Chalky, you probably will remember this, and I don't, and I'm...
I thought to say Boston can't lose, I'm sorry, Jason, but when one team has never done it and it has repeatedly failed on it, just to say it doesn't matter, you can't take into account, I don't buy that.
This is going to be my question to you. In Game 7, they only really had one Game 7, right, against Toronto. How did Embiid play in that game?
He played good. He played great in that game.
I don't think he was that great. Well, they had the Atlanta game, too.
Oh, that's true.
That was with Doc,
I was going to say, I mean, I heard you say, he didn't play good in a Game 7. He didn't play that bad against Toronto.
I didn't think he had a good Toronto game. I could be wrong. I thought Butler was pretty much the guy in that game. I'll look it up as we talk.
He was the guy. He was the guy in the whole series. I mean, he's a winner.
What did he win?
I understand what you're saying, that he hasn't actually won a championship, but he is a winner.
He's been on 4 teams and hasn't won nothing.
Yeah, he's never.
But
won.
we all bowed to Jimmy Butler.
Would you like him? Would you like to have him on this team?
Of course.
Oh well, there you go. There's your answer. Would they have won this series if he was on this team?
I'll take.
Series will be over.
There's a couple guys I would take on the team.
Well, that's all I'm saying. Like, if he's a difference maker on a team, like, he's basically single-handedly carrying the Heat through this series. Through the whole playoffs probably. The Heat shouldn't be where they're at without him. I mean, if we had him on the team, like Chalky just said, the series would be over. I mean, I know that not every winner wins it all, but he's a winner.
There's a lot of guys that are like that. That if you had on your team, you would win. I mean,
I get it. I'm only saying, like, you can't say that you have to win a championship to be a winner. He's a winning player. I mean, he comes up clutch all the time. Does he not?
Butler?
You play to win championships, and if you don't win a championship,
yeah. How many rings does he have?
Dan Marino.
I know we always talk about rings, but he's still a winner.
Listen, I think he's a phenomenal player, but what does he want?
So I don't have the full box score from the Toronto Game 7, but Embiid put up 21 and 11. So
that's not good. That's
not
good enough.
The points weren't good.
I don't know what his shooting percentage or anything was, but 21 is.
That's not good enough.
Yeah.
No good.
If he scores 21 tomorrow, Sunday,
they're not winning.
Probably lost.
Oh, they're losing. Yeah. They're losing for sure. And if they don't get at least almost
unless you get 30 from
60,
Harden and 30 from Maxey, then they can win.
If they don't get, and I've texted you this, Jason. Like, if they don't get 60 to 65 out of those other 3 players, they're not going to win either. Forget about Embiid, because he's not going to score 50 on his own. I mean, unless he just goes crazy.
No, he's not. You're not going to have those regular season performance where he just single-handedly carries the team. He needs another guy who's going to get 20 and 30.
He needs to be in the low 30s, like his average is. Right, and then he needs the support from Harden.
Games 4 and 5 are the blueprint. Like that kind of game where it's him and another guy, and then someone else in a supporting role. Like Harden didn't have a great game 5, but he didn't do much wrong, and he did enough. And Maxey and everybody played well that game. So
but Harden also controlled. He did control the offense.
He didn't score. He didn't score. That's what I'm saying. He didn't have a great scoring game, but
he wasn't driving to the net and just going like this. I mean, he was controlling the pick and roll game. He was controlling the pass. And guys were hitting the shots. I mean, even in the last game, he did have a numerous amount of passes to Tucker and Melton for open shots that they
guys just missed them.
And how many times have Shaq and Barkley talked about Harden in the playoffs? Like constantly talking about how he had in big games he just.
According to Shaq said he won his 2 games already. Now, I don't agree, because if he's terrible in a game, then. He can't be terrible in a game. Now, he doesn't necessarily have to win the game.
No.
But
that's been the problem is he's been terrible in 3 games now. It's not like he's okay.
They cannot win if he's terrible. If he's okay, they can win. But
that's true.
Can't be terrible.
That's true.
Yeah, you can't be terrible. You can't. Yeah. All right, I think that
it's scary.
I mean, that probably wraps up the Sixers talk. So next time we talk, we will know if they won or lost, and if there's won, who they're playing, and where they're at in the series. So we'll see. We got our predictions, we got our thoughts. So let's wrap up the Sixers, and I think we will say farewell to Meeker as we cover the PGA Championship.
Yeah, guys, have a good night, and let's see what happens Sunday. Be back next week.
All right, Meeker. All right, so unfortunately, we could not get a special guest for golf like we like to do for our majors. But the good thing is the PGA Championship is the worst probably of the 4 majors. So, that's okay. They moved it around in, I guess, few years back now where it's second in the slots opposed to last to try to give it a little more clout. So we shall see. They are playing at Oak Hill Country Club, which is in New Jersey, I believe.
Rochester, New York.
Oh, is that where it is? Rochester, New York? Okay. So they're in New York. Not sure what the weather forecast is for. Probably okay. But a few things I know. They've played on this course. Did they play the U.S. Open here?
In 2013 they played a major.
A major, right? Was it?
I don't know if it was PGA or U.S. Open.
It could have been the PGA,
Either
but
one.
from what I've read, it's drastically different than when it was played there in the past. They've made it a much longer course, I believe. Tightened up the fairway, so it seems like you got to kind of hit long and straight. And irons, your iron play is probably going to be the difference maker, which in most majors should probably be the difference maker. Your irons and putting is probably the two things that separate. So with that in mind, I'm sure we have ideas around guys that would kind of do well on courses like that. I'll kick it off to you, Jason. Like I said, we don't have 10, top 20 just because we don't have odds. But we can give out picks of who guys we like or talk about guys. And then from there, I mean, obviously, if you like, you got to win top 20. If the odds are top 10 and top 20 are decent, obviously that's also a play.
Yeah. Yeah, and the notes I've taken on the course is kind of like what you said, Tom. Driving accuracy is major, because the rough is thick, and you do not want to be in the rough. The fairways are narrow, and you need to be a good iron player. So it's basically what you said, Tom. I sent you guys like a flyover of the holes. A couple of them look pretty interesting. There's a creek running through a bunch of them, so that should be interesting.
I thought I read too. Did they add bunkers?
Yeah, there's
a bunch
ton
of
bunkers.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I mean, you need to like your approach shots need to be strong. And apparently 16, 17, and 18 is like one of the toughest closing sequences of any of these majors courses. So it should be a good tournament. You know, hopefully, like you said, the weather's going to be okay. That's one thing I did not check. But to get into my picks, so basically what I looked at is obviously driving accuracy. I picked guys that were accurate off the tee, and strokes gained approach. So those are the two characteristics I looked for. Obviously, guys that are coming into it in form, somewhat in form. And I'm going to give you 7 winners and then 3 guys that are probably guys that you use top 20. And what I usually do for top 20, and like you said, unfortunately, we don't have that right now, the odds for that. I look for plus guys. Like, I'm not betting anybody who's minus, for like a top 10 or top 20. I mean, I'm not doing it. I'm looking for plus guys. So my first guy, it's a little chalky, but I think he's definitely in form, especially in this tournament that's ongoing now. I think, and even towards the end of the Masters, he started coming on a little bit that last round. Is Scheffler,
dude? We don't like to always pick chalk when it comes to golf tournaments. You look at every strokes gain category in golf.
Yeah,
the man is top 5 in every single category that you look at. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he's on my list as well. And I hate it writing him down because he's second choice.
But you know what you do with that? I mean, and I only look at DraftKings.
You do your parlay.
Yeah, I'm going to give you everybody DraftKings odds, but I have a lot of sites that I use, and I know you could at least get 9-1 on them.
Yeah, and that's what I did see 9-1 in a lot of books.
DraftKings was 8-1, so but I'll parlay him. I already did it with
8.5 right now.
Okay, so I always talk about that's Swiatek. She does not lose on clay, and she's like minus money to win the French Open. So I'm parlaying a lot of stuff with her. And that's one of them, and I wound up getting like 18-1 with Scheffler. So, but obviously Scheffler's not a guy you could bet top 20 because he's going to be minus. Top 10, he may be plus. I'm not sure, but my second guy is Morikawa. He's another good irons player. He did not play. He didn't play great, but he didn't play poorly in the Masters. He was hanging around for a while, and then I think the last round he kind of fell off, but. I got 20-1 on Morikawa. Tyrrell Hatton, I think, is a real live long shot at 50-1. I'm going to play him. Now, that's a guy I'm going to play top 20 because you'll get plus on him for sure in the top 20. But I'm definitely going to play him to win. Cam Young, I just think he's going to win a major, and it's going to be soon. So I don't want to not be on Cam Young when he eventually wins a major. So at 25-1, I'm going to take Cam Young. Shane Lowry, he's another guy. Like, you look at the stats, and he's just always he's right up there with all the strokes gained stats.
Yeah, that's because he must have some deal with the sports books where for every dollar I bet on him, he gets a percentage of it to lose. Because I've probably burnt more money on Shane Lowry than any golfer.
Yeah, he's 35-1. And then the two other guys, Hovland's another guy. He's sniffing around to win a major. I think he's going to do it at some point. He's always around. So 28-1, I'm going to use Hovland. And then the seventh guy is a guy that I never bet. I just never bet him because he never wins, but he's got to win at some point because he's always around the top 10 in almost every major. Is Cantlay. What, you thought of somebody else?
I actually have Cantlay. Yeah, but I thought it was my other guy too.
It's Cantlay, man. He's just like every major he winds up finished top 10 and his stats. What was he? 20. He was 18 in driving accuracy. He's only 42nd in strokes gains approach. So that's nothing.
And Cantlay's biggest issue is he always has that round that just like destroys his. Was it the? I think the Masters was it the final round, right? He was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
It's always something with him, yeah.
Yeah. And just I breezed through like Morikawa, but if you look at his stats, he's third in accuracy off the tee, and he's fourth in strokes gained approach. Like, and he's probably a top 5 irons player. Like this tournament should really be up his alley. And then the 3 long shots I'll give you for top 20 is Russell Henley. He was first in off the tee accuracy. He was 100-1 to win, so I'm sure you're going to get great odds on him for top 20. Tom Kim, he's another guy. If you look at his stats, he's second in driving accuracy and 15th in strokes gained approach. And I believe he was 35 or 40-1 to win. So definitely top 20 for him. And then one of the live guys, Mito Pereira. He's a guy. He was in the running last year for the PGA, and then I think he fell off in the last round. But he's another guy that was 100-1. So I'm gonna do some top 20, maybe even top 40 bets with Mito. So those are my guys.
Yeah, I'll run through a couple of mine. One thing I found interesting is when you look at driving accuracy, so many of those top 10, 15 driving accuracy guys are not like anywhere close in the strokes gained off the tee and stuff. So it's, I mean, I would only assume that they probably don't hit very long, and that's why they're as accurate as they are. So I found that to be a little interesting. But yeah, I'll go run through my picks, and I'm gonna I recently, a couple weeks back, watched Full Swing on Netflix, the documentary that followed a couple of golfers around. So I'm definitely biased towards people that I liked. Morikawa is one guy that I just wanted to punch in his face because I just think he's a nerd. So I'm against him just because he's a nerd. So I have Scheffler as well. I have Cantlay as well. I had Cam Young as well, and I had Victor Hovland as well. So they're my same picks as Jason. So I only made 2 additional picks, and one is, if Scheffler's not going to win, I'm just going to take the guy that's close to him, and that's Schauffele, because his name sounds sort of like Scheffler. And he had the numbers. Yeah, he did have the numbers that I thought were. And now my new boy, who finally he had a breakout a couple weeks back in Mexico. I loved him on the Full Swing. Tony Finau, who is the biggest joke.
You didn't like him.
Is the biggest joke. I know, and I watched Full Swing, and now I like him.
Yeah, he's a good guy for sure.
Yeah, they said the reason why he doesn't win these majors is because he just loves his family too much, and he doesn't have that killer instinct.
So he's soft.
He's soft, yeah. So, but I think that he just won in Mexico, I believe, right? That was the Mexican tournament that he won in. He's been really coming on strong lately, last year or so, and this is the year he breaks out. So Finau is the other guy. I had the odds. I mean, Chalky can probably say they're all relatively similar range, the 28s, the 29. I mean, nobody's crazy.
Yeah, so Xander's 22, Finau's 25, Cantlay's 22.
Yeah.
Who else did you have?
Cam Young was like 28 or so.
Cam Young is 35.
35. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Who was Hovland? Hovland.
28.
28.
28. Yeah. So all those mid-range guys, they're my 1, 2. What did I say? 6, 7, 7 guys. 6 guys. 6 guys. Nothing crazy. No crazy long shots. No crazy like top 20. I mean, just kind of spice those guys around. I mean, gun to the head, guy who wins is Scheffler, in my opinion. But yeah, 9-1. Obviously, you're looking for better odds. Chalk.
Yeah, so I mean, just on the weather, I mean, we're a week out, so it's a 10-day, and you can't rely on it. But there's some chance of showers Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Right now, it's probably not going to mean a damn thing. But
yeah, I'm thinking it was this weekend when I said it anyway. So yeah, I forgot.
I mean, we talked last week about how it was supposed to be completely dry on Derby Day, and then 25 minutes after the Derby, it opened up, and the last 2 races were a slop, and it wasn't in the forecast. So anything can happen anywhere, any day. My lock is Jordan Spieth. Oh wait, it says here he might scratch. I don't I don't know who I like. No, I picked one from each group: the favorites, middle, and a longer shot. Scheffler is obviously, he's not going to be the favorite because Rahm won the Masters and he's up there in the stats too. But as far as that top group, I'm actually going to take Rory. His putting is suffering when you look at the stats overall, but he's doing all right in some other categories. I'm going to say there's a lot on him for that Masters, and he completely flopped.
Yeah,
maybe it's time to rebound.
He just hit so long that if he's not going to be accurate, it is going to be tough for him to, like Jason said, with the rough. But I mean, that's all the guys. But when there's long hits,
that's the guy to me. Like his odds are never.
They're always
value when Rory McIlroy.
And I don't know that 11-1 is value, but he's the longest of those top 3, whereas he was. Co-favorite with Scheffler. Well, they were all Rahm, Scheffler, and they were all pretty close, 6, 7, 8. So he's a little farther back in that first cut this time around. So I went with Rory.
Rahm definitely is a guy I would. I mean, I wish I could lay odds on Rahm to not.
He's not.
I mean,
I didn't like. I mean, I didn't like him to win the Masters because he wasn't coming in form, and he played well, obviously. But I would lay off him here for sure. That middle section, Cam Young, 35-1 right now on DraftKings. Nothing clever to add. And my longer shot was Tyrell Hatton at 55-1. So I didn't go too deep, and obviously, there's some top 20 plays
the PGA,
with guys in between. But
how many guys are we looking at in the PGA?
Well, I know there's 18 live guys, and I don't know the total
it's a larger field than the Masters, right?
Bigger than Masters.
Yeah, Masters.
Yeah.
Less than the Open, right?
Yeah.
I believe so. And so just on the history of the course, it seems like they play the PGA here every 10 years because they played it 2003 and 2013. And your winners are not the most, 2003, Sean McKeel and Chad Campbell finished 1-2. 2013, Jason Duffner, Jim Furyk. I mean, some of those guys, but they're not the top level. Furyk certainly wasn't a top level player 10 years ago.
Yeah, I read too. The PGA is a lot of one and done type guys as well at times, so they'll be their only major. That's one, but
yeah, and like you said, these courses, pretty much a lot of the courses that regularly have the majors, other than Augusta, they'll tear it up and completely change it between 10-year cycles if they have them, that often. For some
from what I read, it's just like a different course than it was in 2010.
Yeah.
You can't take anything from that and
that's one thing I didn't do is I didn't go back and look at who did well.
Yeah, the thing, and it's hard because if they change the course around, usually a lot of times you could say, I mean,
how many of these guys were even playing 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, most.
But even if the course is part of is played in the other PGA events, you could. You can correlate. I think now I've learned the Genesis, people that play well in the Genesis tend to play well at Augusta, right? Courses like that, things like that. And here you just don't have that data. And maybe why you see some one and dones in the PGA because you don't, there is no pedigree of guys that have looked good on certain courses, etc.
Yeah, so PGA has a field of 156.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, it's a big field.
Yeah, I mean,
and
just looking
18
through
live, like Jason said.
Yeah, just looking through the live guys. I mean, Koepka, I don't know.
So his odds were terrible too. I thought
I
his
would
odds
never-
were terrible.
I'm
Yeah.
going to bet Kepka. I mean, Cam Smith, I guess he's always live. But for me, it was Pereira. I thought was the best odds of anybody, or the best chance of anybody to kind of, get top 20 or whatever.
All right. Yeah. Anything else before we wrap this up?
No, I mean,
Any spot plays? Any NHL plays for those folks that have been following?
We're not going to deconstruct the Derby, or is that for next week?
Well, I was going to say, I wish I would have given that spot play that we wound up betting in the last race, because that horse was not losing that race.
And the odds are actually pretty good.
Yeah, we got plus money on him, and it might be a horse to look for later in the year.
It was an impressive win. He didn't have the. I mean, the ride was horrendous.
Yeah, he got in all kinds of trouble. and-
Yeah.
He didn't get going until late on the rail, right?
And he
Yeah.
broke. Yeah, and he went. And he had to do it against adverse. The slop. Like Chalky said, the rains came. Yeah, horse. I thought the horse looked good. I mean, what are we gonna deconstruct? The horse that won, you probably wouldn't have had. Pletcher's been proven to be a cheater. Not that we didn't know that already. Probably why, I guess, I haven't seen, but is that why Forte scratched? He had some serious foot injury. That is because he really was going to test positive.
It makes you think. I don't know. You don't know, and you don't know if they knew that this was. I mean, look, because he's run in Kentucky multiple times since that positive test came back, because he ran at Keeneland twice last fall. So the state would have known, if I guess, but it certainly looks funny that they didn't let him run, because the press of the Derby winner coming back with a positive months before would not look good. I don't know. It's
the one
unfortunate.
The one thing I want to throw in, and I'm not making excuses for my pick, but I hate when I make a pick like Dermot Sotogaki, and he has no chance from the time the gates open. So like,
and that's the problem with
the
the Derby too. Is
you don't know
the
if,
break dictates so much of it.
Was the horse a good horse, and he just didn't get out of the gate, and he was eliminated immediately, or he just was not a good?
I mean, the horse is only run on the lead. Like, he had needed to be close or on the lead. And
He didn't want to be
eliminated,
behind. And he wound up finishing sixth.
I mean, he came sixth. He didn't quit.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is, though, that all the horses from the back tended to finish to the front. Two Phils was the only horse that was close to the lead.
Yeah.
Well, Hit Show actually was pretty impressive. He ran pretty close to the lead and finished fifth.
Yeah,
I think, right?
Fifth he finished. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, Mage not breaking benefited the horse, because then he was able to weave through the traffic.
I'll tell you right now, and we're doing our Preakness show next week, obviously, but I am going to be against Mage in the Preakness.
Yeah, it's just overall, I don't think, a very good crop. It doesn't. I mean,
No,
what
but
did the
there's a
buyer come
horse-
back? I didn't even see it.
Who's that?
What did the buyer come back?
105.
105.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, timing wise, it was
fa-
pretty quick, because it was like a 2:01, I think, time or something.
Fast,
wasn't it?
yeah. Did you see the last quarter was like 26 seconds or something?
Yeah.
They were slow.
Oh
They were
yeah, I'm
crawling
sure.
at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at a horse that did not run in the Derby that was probably going to be my pick for the Preakness.
I mean, it's hard to not take two fills coming out. You know,
not
if
running.
he's not running the Preakness,
No,
so it's easy to
yeah.
not take two fills.
He will not win. I guarantee it.
I mean, he to me, he was the most impressive, even though he didn't win, obviously, because I mean, and the jockey said he was at that pace, and the jockey said I had to move early or get boxed in, and he got into the rail and saved ground. And
Yeah, he saved a lot of ground for sure.
Yeah, I think he ran him. I think he rode him well. I don't think there's.
And you can't knock the winner. I mean, because if you would have known he was running 18th place and then shot out like that, I mean, he got the jump on Angel of Empire. Angel of Empire might not have run him down, but he got first move and accelerated, and it worked out.
I mean, one thing you can say about the winner is, first of all, he won first out at 7 furlongs.
Yeah, the thing, he won first out 7 furlongs, breaking like a rocket. If you watch that race, like an absolute rocket.
He ran on the lead and won, and then he's run.
Yeah.
Obviously, this race he won, and he's run well off the lead too. So
I got my suspicions with that trainer as well. So we'll see how long till he gets popped for something.
There's plenty of time to trash the horse next week when we go
I
through
do
it.
and again, we're going to talk about this next week, but I do like, obviously I don't like it on Derby day because I lose money, but I do like when a horse wins the Derby that really isn't a super horse, and you're going to have value to bet against in the Preakness on the horse. I like that.
It should be, because that horse should not have been 15-1, so he might get bet.
Yeah,
much
well, I
more
mean,
than
the
he
other
should on
thing
the
was
Derby either.
the other thing with the
gonna get
Derby, like, you know, if Forte's in that race and the pace is what the pace is, I mean,
You might have won.
yeah, right.
Forte could have won.
You might have won.
So it's like, you know, they scratched down the 18. It's just whatever. It is what it is. All right, let's wrap this up on a Friday night.
Oh, and next
Episode-
week, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Next week will be our 1 year anniversary. Chalky, right? Is that right? The
That's
Preakness
right.
show
That'll
is
be
our-
that'll be 1 year.
Is that when we started the Broad Street Hustle?
That is when we started the Broad Street Hustle.
So that'll be episode 55.
Yeah.
Oh, because we did multiple episodes.
Yeah.
Some
We did
weeks.
a couple of golf episodes, yeah.
This is the 52nd week of episodes, but that we're doing
Right.
right now. But yeah,
Right. All right, and hopefully we'll have Jimmy D for that show, as a lot of our horse shows we do. So it'll be a good way to commemorate. Maybe he'll give us a little, as it's 1 year, the new year. Maybe he'll do a little mama strut for us, which could be nice. All right, episode 54, Broad Street Hustle. Follow us on Twitter at Broad Street Hustle. Remember to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and please leave a comment on YouTube for some feedback. Good night.